And welcome back to the Hot Mess Life Coach, Season 4, Episode 10. I am your host, Brian Hogan, both a hot mess and a life coach, and I am here with my co-host, Morgan Barbrett, and this is the show for people trying to get it together while the world seems to be falling apart. But the world is not falling apart. We are just undergoing a massive transformation of human consciousness, of which I would like to be a part. And today's topic is social masking and authenticity and how all that works. So
Yeah.
let's dive in. Good morning, Mo.
Good morning. Yeah, so we've been talking about authenticity for quite a few episodes now. So we've talked about social masking a little bit indirectly, but we're going to try to more directly introduce the concept, talk about where it shows up and how it affects us. So the concept of social masking, it basically just means that a person may, in various situations in their life, hide or mask their true thoughts, feelings, in any given moment. So like I may be feeling one way, but the way that I present myself to the world, the way that I behave, is different or departed from what that actual feeling is. And so there are different ways that we can benefit from this. For example, in a interview for a job, you might be feeling insecure, but then when you show up to the interview, you mask a little bit and you try to present yourself in a way that appears confident to increase your likelihood of getting the job. So that's one example.
Yes, I just confident and detail-oriented and a go-getter and works well with others.
Yeah, look at me. I am all these good things. Please hire me.
Yeah.
Little Even if that's not what you're feeling inside.
Only one of those four is true. Which one?
But the main place where masking usually shows up is when we're looking for or trying to obtain some sense of like belonging or acceptance from other people, where you're presenting yourself in a way that you think that other people will accept and not punish you for. So you're both trying to gain acceptance and avoid being judged by other people.
Yeah, and so the job interview is a great example of that, because the acceptance you're trying to gain is like, I want your money and I want this job.
Yeah.
So please accept me. Accept me for who I'm not.
Right. Exactly. And then the fear of judgment is like, if I don't get this job, then I have to go like apply for other jobs, and I don't want to do that. So don't judge me, just like me, so I can have this job.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's the added layer of like, if we told people we're going for the job interview and we don't get the job, then we have to tell all those people that we were rejected. And that's like extra rejection, future rejection. So.
Yeah. So, and then another form that I think, before people get into like job interviews, like this happens a lot more in life. It's not just like, oh, like I am specifically trying to present myself a certain way. Sometimes we kind of do it without even noticing, or like intending to, like when you're in like a friend group and there's some sort of peer pressure to behave a certain way, or everybody else seems to feel a certain way or seems to like a certain thing. And so in order to fit in with the group and not be rejected by the group, then you may adjust the way that you behave around them, or pretend to like things, or pretend to think things that you may not actually fully agree with or feel, so that you can feel closer to the people that are there, and also not risk making waves, not risk being rejected by those people.
Yeah, you know what? That makes me realize something, that we were talking a little bit right before we began about the danger of when you lose track of your social mask, like, because you've put your social mask on, and if you lose track, then that's dangerous, because you're really losing sight of who you really are, like the real you. And as you were talking now, it made me realize that's kind of what happened to me in high school with my like dalliance in the born again Christian circles. Like,
oh yeah,
I moved to Connecticut. We grew up in Connecticut, but then we moved to Massachusetts for 6 years while my mom went back to school. So we moved back to Connecticut, and I was starting high school as a freshman. And we moved in next door to this family, and the son was my age and my grade, and he went to a thing called Young Life. So I was like, oh, okay, I'll go. He invited me, and I was like, I'll go to Young Life. Like, yeah, I'm young. I want to have a life. Like, let's do it. You know what I mean? And it turns out Young Life is like it's a missionary sort of born again Christian group.
It sounds like it. Young Life. That's the kind of names that they use for that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had no idea. I
Right.
was very, very naive child, but I just had no clue. But I went and I was like, okay, this is nice. And everybody's like really loving and really kind. And they're very like Christian about it all, So like I go there and I feel this love and acceptance and it's beautiful. And after a few weeks in the group, it becomes very clear to me that the people who love and accept Jesus into their heart as their Lord and Savior have like a VIP level of love and acceptance that the rest of us don't have. Like
Mhm.
we're accepted. It's like you're accepted because it's my obligation to accept you, but you also have the stank of hell on you, and the sorry, like it's hard to be around,
I've
or
never
whatever.
heard that described that way. That's really funny.
But once you accept Jesus into your heart and you wash the stank of hell off and you shower in the golden rays of God's glory or whatever it is, then you're really, really newly and deeply loved and cherished and accepted by that group. And so naturally, as a person wanting belonging and love and acceptance and
Yeah.
who had been in the closet his whole life and had been split off from his true self, it was really, really an attractive concept to have VIP level
Yeah.
love and acceptance. So I accepted Jesus into my life. And in hindsight, that's clearly why. But during the time of being in young life, like for those last 3 years of high school, and then for a couple years after when I was doing the missionary work on the hospital ship, traveling all around to all the countries, like I was like deeply in the idea that I am a born again Christian
Yeah.
and Jesus loves me, and I was like struggling against my homosexuality, like I have to become straight because I had completely lost track of the fact that I
Yeah.
had put on born again Christianity as a social mask,
Mhm. Yeah, and
you know.
the reason that people will put on social masks, the motivation for it is to gain acceptance and avoid being judged. And so in that moment, you could tell based on the way that this group was behaving that if you jump on board with what they're doing and you like get really into it, then you have community, then you have acceptance. And if you don't, if you are like honest about who you actually are, then you're going to receive some form of rejection. And so that like motivates people to try to change things about themselves so that they can, and that's
Mhm.
when social mask, instead of it just being something that like, okay, like I'm doing this to either protect myself or like benefit me in the moment, like at a job interview, or like if, for example, like you were in actual danger by being honest about your like gender identity or any other thing, right? um then I said gender, I meant sexuality, sorry. Then it
I
becomes,
understood.
yes. Then it becomes this thing where like you don't even realize you're wearing a mask. You
Yeah.
don't realize that like this isn't actually who you are because you've started to conflate the mask with your identity.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, I am a born again Christian whose destiny is to be straight because that's the belief system. And
Yeah.
so I lost track of the fact of who I actually was. And then I was doing exactly what you just said. I was trying to change a part of my true self, which spoiler alert, it's not possible. And I
Right.
was trying to change that part to match the mask, which is what I had thought. I was so hypnotized at that point that I thought the mask was my true self, that I was trying to twist the gayness out of me in
Hmm.
order to match my true self, but I was really trying to match a mask.
Yeah. uh, I can't even imagine like like Brian late in life, born again Christian, like it just like I can't, like your true self does not, cannot exist in that framework.
I think that's true.
Yeah.
Yes. While you were talking about if you're in real danger, you might need to put on the social mask too.
Yeah.
Like it reminded me of a time. I don't know if you know this, or I think I've told you this, but I don't know how much I've mentioned it on the show. But like I used to run a medical marijuana dispensary in West Hollywood for 7 years,
Yeah.
and at one point during that time, we were on a delivery, and I got held up at gunpoint, and there were two masked gunmen, and one had stuck
There's
the gun in
actual
my
masks
face,
in
and
this
they
story.
oh my gosh, there's literal masks. Yeah.
Okay,
So
anyway.
they were wearing literal masks, and I should have been wearing my social mask, but instead I took it off. So it was the weirdest thing.
Yeah.
Like they had their masks, they had the gun in my face. They said, give me all the pot," which I gave them, which was like, I don't know, like a half an hour, like nothing amount of pot. It was so crazy. But you know, whatever, desperate
Yeah.
times, I guess. So they took the stuff, and then he says, got the gun, like, right, and he says, "Get down on the ground." And I had this knowing, you know how sometimes you have like a felt sense and you just know something and you know it to be the case. I had
Mhm.
this knowing, and my knowing was, if I get down on the ground, I will get shot in the back of the head. And I just knew it to be the case. It was like, this, I cannot obey him,
Yeah.
but he has a gun in my face. And so I also have to obey him. Like, right. You know, like there's my catch 22. I have a knowing that I cannot, or I will die. And yet I must, because he has a gun in my face. And so in that moment, I fell back on the only thing that I knew, like, as a knee jerk, which was sarcasm, which is actually very close. I know, but which is very, very close to my true and real self.
Yeah.
Like, because I'm playful and mischievous. And so I took off the social mask of like, I should defer to you because you have the gun and all that stuff. And instead, I looked at him and I locked eyes with him. And I don't know where this came from. It was totally involuntary. And I rolled my eyes. He said, "Get down on the ground." Yeah. He said, "Get down on the ground." And I looked at him and I went like that. Like, and I might have even said "really," but it might not have, I might not have verbalized that. It might have just been in my brain, but I might have said it. I can't even remember now, but it was, the look was definitely like, "Really?" Like,
I don't
down on the
I
ground.
don't know where your
Come on.
amygdala was in this, because anybody else would just be like straight panicking. I would not be.
Yeah, totally. It was so, I went to like, what's habitual, and, you know,
Yeah.
like, you know, sarcasm. Like, I guess that is maybe a social mask, but it's like the one I feel the most comfortable with as like a gay man who would have to use that as a defense mechanism at other times.
Yeah, yeah.
So I sarcasm trotted out, and I was like, "Really?" And he goes, "Fine, just run away." And I was like, "Okay." And I turned and I ran, and I just ran and ran and ran and ran until I was back around the corner and in the car with my partner who drove me to the delivery, and then we got out of there.
Oh my god.
But that was, I really felt like that was me taking off a social mask
Yeah.
and being like, "I'm going to show you my true self."
Okay. Yeah. That's such a wild story. But I think the more like, I guess, direct example of masking is the people who were doing that. They're posturing. They were like, you know that they're not going to be that threatening like at every moment of their lives. Like that there's a whole person underneath that mask, and they were putting on like this machismo, threatening, I'm dangerous kind of vibe to benefit themselves in that moment.
It's so true. Oh my gosh, it's so true. And looking at it that way, it actually makes his reaction make more sense. Like, he's putting on this bravado social mask, and when he is faced with my unexpected response of sarcasm, he's like, "Oh," like, you know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like, I
It
just, this is not what I expected.
affected his mask.
Yeah,
He thought you were gonna get down on the ground, and it surprised him. And then he's
I
like,
think you're
"Oh, I
right.
don't know what to do, so I guess run away."
Yeah, run away. And I mean, I don't really know for sure if he would have shot me in the back of the head. Like,
Right.
you can't really know the future, but that is what it felt like. I was like, I can't listen to him. I
Yeah.
just knew that. I was like, I cannot take my eyes away, or I'm done.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, that was funny.
Hmm.
So social masks coming up all over the place,
Yes.
and sometimes they do benefit you.
Right.
So I guess maybe I took off. How would you define that? Was that me removing my social mask, or was I just putting on a social mask that was an unexpected mask to wear in that situation?
Yeah, I think it's tough to tell because I can't be in, like, the chemicals of your brain in terms of what was happening. 'Cause
You can't?
that would normally be a situation where there would be some form of, like, instinctual, like, adrenaline rush, so whether we call that your true self or a mask or what, I who knows, but it happens. Um, but yeah, I don't know, Brian.
There was definitely an adrenaline rush, no
Yeah.
doubt, going along with it, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure if, like, adrenaline is more likely to have someone put on a mask or to remove one.
The more I talk about it, the more what I think happened was, I in instead of wearing the social mask that is appropriate to that situation, I was able to somehow reach into my chest of masks and pull out the mask that I felt the most familiar using,
Mhm.
even though it was not appropriate for the situation, and it worked because I was good at that mask.
Hmm. Maybe either you're most comfortable with that one, or that you're just a sarcastic person and that's authentically how you behave.
Yeah, maybe, maybe I would accept that because I am mischievous and playful, and
Yeah. Yeah.
I like to make a good crack. So
Yeah. Hmm. So another example of masking that I kind of wanted to bring up is I recently started hanging out with a new friend, and the first time I hung out with her, she seemed very relaxed and she seemed like very easy to connect with, talk to. It was like I could just feel the authenticity like just emanating off of her. And then the next time I saw her, she her entire energy was different. And she was like very happy, very positive, very like nothing out of the ordinary, but it was like the happiness was so intense that it felt not real. And so I asked her, I was like, you see, like, I just kind of like picked a random like word. I was like, oh, like you seem like kind of stressed. And then the social mask like came melting off, like, oh my God, yeah, there's this thing that's actually going on. Like, I wanted to only bring, kind of good vibes to you. I didn't want to dump this on you because we're new friends. And, this is, I don't know you very well, but here's what's actually going on. And so, like, because we're trying to like build this friendship, we're in this moment, and she's trying to bring everything that's good to me because she is excited about the friendship. But what's actually going on is that there's some like shit unfolding in her life. And so in that moment, I would think, and I can't put myself in her head, I would think that she would be thinking to herself, like, I don't want to I don't want to come off as negative. I don't want to come off as like somebody who's going to be constantly dumping my problems on other people. I don't want to come off as somebody who is any number of things. Like who knows what, but whatever it was, the feelings she was authentically feeling, she felt like were not what was going to be most beneficial to present in that moment. But because I'm somebody who like understands that shit happens, life happens, and that we're not supposed to feel happy all the time, I created a invitation to feel whatever she was feeling and know that she wasn't going to be judged or rejected, which is why she could take the mask off all in one moment. And then we could just continue connecting in this kind of like non-masked way. But that was like a really interesting moment recently because it seems like masking sometimes happens more frequently with people that are like new. Um, it kind of depends on how comfortable you are being your authentic self. But for somebody um, who does feel comfortable being themselves around most of their relationships, then like masking usually will come up with people who are new or that you don't know because you don't know how they're going to react to who you actually are.
yeah, what struck me about your story just now too is that your friend putting on her mask, like part of that motive, we can't know for sure her motives
Mm-hmm.
because it's her, you know what I mean? But like
Yeah.
just as an example, like we can sort of extrapolate and like we can guess that some of that motive would have been about like I don't want to be rejected, I want to make a good
Mm-hmm.
impression. But there's also this other component that struck me while you were talking, which is like I want to make it as I want to keep it easy for the person I'm going to visit. I
Yeah.
want to not tax them. I
Mm-hmm.
don't want to over exert the threshold of where the relationship is at the moment. Things like
Yeah.
that. So those are all really benevolent reasons
Yeah.
for a person to put on a social mask. And so I just want to highlight that too because it it can be easy for us to talk about social masks and authenticity, and then it seems like we're saying like social masks are the bad and authenticity is the good. Like obviously we're not. Neither one of us has said that, but
Yeah.
it could just like it can become a false dichotomy, and it's like actually masks can have a lot of benefits and be useful at times. And on top
Yeah.
of that, even if they're not beneficial, they can be inspired by a benevolent motive. And so that's also worth noting. Like a mask that's entirely dysfunctional and not helpful at all, like your friend trying to have her mask on at her the get together with you, that wasn't going to be useful because you weren't going to get to know each other better and you would have sensed something was off. You know what I mean? Like, so it wasn't necessarily going to be the most useful thing. However, it came from benevolent motives,
Mhm.
not just fear motives.
Yeah.
There was both,
Yeah.
and so that's worth noticing too.
Yeah. Hmm. And what that kinda makes me think about is, like, there are a lot of different reasons that somebody might put on a mask, but the important thing is that we kind of are aware of its impact. Like, if I'm putting on a mask, I'm doing it because I think it'll benefit me. But am I doing it in a situation where it is protecting me? Am I doing it in a situation where it is preventing me from being able to connect deeply with another person? Am I putting it on in a situation where I would prefer for people not to really know the full truth about who I am, which is totally valid. There are some people that, like, for example, we talked about, well, Brian and I talked about this before we were on. Family gatherings is a place where you might mask. You may not, depending on who your family is, you may not want them to know everything about you. Some people have families that they're fine with their family knowing everything about them, but some people also uh, know their families well enough to know that if uh, in their particular situation, if they were to be fully honest about who they are and how they are, that they can expect or guarantee that they're going to be judged. And so they may
Yeah.
choose to avoid um, expressing that, or being their full selves without some variation of a mask when they're around extended family.
Yeah, because it's you have to feel safe, and that's one of the things about the social mask is that it can help you feel safe and actually help you be safer. Like
Yeah.
if you're in an environment with people who are unsafe, like not just like the mugger in the alley with me, but like someone who's just going to weaponize your pain or who's going to use something vulnerable you told them against you later. And like
Yeah.
people who do that kind of thing often are unconscious of the pattern existing within them
Yeah.
that they do it, which actually makes them even less safe because they don't know they're going to use this stuff against you. And so you can't even explain to them that you don't want them to do it anymore because they don't know they're doing it. In which case, wearing the masks around them is like of paramount importance, So
You sound like you have a
not only
specific example of this.
it's just I mean, family gatherings, like there are definitely like strains of people in my family who it's not safe to be around. So I'm just thinking about that, and like I know that firsthand from friends of mine and their families too. So there's a lot of interesting patterns with people who love each other,
Hmm.
who don't realize, but they're weaponizing each other's pain, or their interactions are shame based. And if you start to realize that, it's okay to put on a social mask to keep yourself safe from those patterns.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, the personal experience is like, growing up as a gay person, like you mentioned, does the mask protect me or does the mask keep me from having intimacy with another person?
Hmm.
And when you asked that, I found that interesting because sometimes the mask can actually be doing both things simultaneously.
Yeah.
Like the I'm a straight person mask was protecting me
Yeah.
for years, or it felt like it to me,
Hmm.
and it was also simultaneously keeping me from having intimacy because people didn't get to know the real me.
Yeah.
And it was such a foundational thing that I was keeping hidden that it was, while it was protecting me, it was also preventing deeper relationships. So it was doing both simultaneously, the good and the bad, or the beneficial and the not so beneficial. Good and bad are too reductive. I don't like
Yeah.
those terms.
Yeah, right. And we don't have to, place a moral judgment on like the consequences or benefits of wearing a social mask. I think it's just up to each individual. Like, what what do I want from this, from the way that I'm showing up? What am I seeking? Um, and then you kind of just have to weigh your own, you know, outcomes as what matters most to you, because if safety is what you need in that moment, then that takes priority over, a deepened connection with whoever you're speaking with. And so I think that's, also why a lot of people will choose to maintain masks, because like it the benefits outweigh the costs. But there's usually going to be some combination. And so like finding a balance and finding spaces where you can take off the mask just so that you don't forget who you actually are is important.
Yeah, it is important because the safety and connection slash belonging are both essential human needs. Like both of them. And like, so if masking helps you feel more safe but keeps you from feeling connected, then it might be a workable solution in a moment, but it's not necessarily going to be a good go-to long term. Same with the other way around. If constant authenticity puts you in a lot of social danger,
Mhm.
then you can't just go around being authentic and letting yourself get bruised like a punching bag. You're going to have to put on masks
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah.
So, you know, I'm just saying this because it's it's not like a static thing, like I'm going to decide right now, okay, it's better masks, or I'm going to decide right now it's better authenticity. It's like the whole thing about perpetual creative response. Like there are moments when it's a mask, there are moments when it's not a
Mhm.
mask, and that's ever changing, like consistently changing. And it has to be vacillating like that because we need connection and we need safety. And until you find yourself in an environment where the people around you consistently make you feel safe while being your true self, there's going to be a need for social masks.
Yeah. Yeah, so I guess it's kind of like a progression or like a timeline where like the goal throughout your life is to find more people and spaces where you feel safe to take off the mask with. And then that way, like eventually you get to a place where you can be your full self more or as much as possible. But the masks serve a purpose, serve a very valid and at times incredibly helpful purpose. Um, and so it's not like necessary to expect yourself to never wear one because they have a
Yeah,
place.
exactly. I mean, you could find the community of people that make you feel safe, move to an ashram, live as your enlightened self for 10 years straight, never wearing a social mask, not even a proclivity to wear one. And as soon as your mother-in-law decides she's coming for a visit, you
Yeah.
mask right the fuck up. And that's okay. That's not bad or wrong. That's fine. That's not a problem. That's the whole point.
That's so
That's the whole
relatable.
point.
That's so funny.
You just keep that mask in a little suitcase under your bed in your ashram next to your yoga mat. And when your mother in law comes, you just take it out and put it on. Hi. Oh my God.
Yes.
It's been 10.
10 years. Oh my gosh. Oh.
Yeah. Anything else you want to share with our viewers about authenticity and social masks today?
I think that we about covered it.
Right on. Well, Mo, thank you. As always, this was a pleasure.
Yeah. This is fun.
And thank you, everybody, for being here. We really appreciate it. If you want to find out more about Morgan and what she does, you can do that online at selfloveatlas.coach or on Instagram at Morgan Barbrett. And if you want to learn more about me and what I do, you can visit thebrianhogan.com, or you can find me on all the social medias at the Brian Hogan. In the meantime, we will be here next week for episode 11 of season 4 of Hot Mess Life Coach. Until then, be hot, be messy, and be blessed. Much love.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.